the US doesn't want a direct conflict with Iran. However, the rhetoric that's coming out from Donald Trump recently, just before the US attack on the Houthis in Yemen, was significant. He turned around to Iran and said, support for the Houthi terrorists must end immediately. Do not threaten the American people, the president who has received the largest mandates in presidential history, or worldwide shipping lanes. If you do, beware, because America will hold you fully accountable, and we won't be nice about it. That's Donald Trump being as blunt as he possibly can. It all depends on the Iranian response post the US attack on the Houthis, which initial indications suggest it's not playing into Donald Trump's hands. They're digging in. Donald Trump's not going to instigate a direct attack against Iran. He's got so many other things that he can work on. There's Iranian sanctions, but he can up those sanctions. He can start to hold Iranian assets that haven't been frozen and start to freeze those and bring further sanctions in against individuals. He can put an awful lot more military pressure in the region and cause Iran real difficulties if the Houthis under Iranian control increase their number of attacks. He can use his proxy in the Middle East to carry out attacks on Iran. And that's, of course, Israel. And Israel's attacked Iran before. Iran has responded directly to Israel. But Donald Trump will use Israel as a proxy before the US would get directly involved. So there's a number of different escalatory measures that are in there. But Donald Trump's rhetoric doesn't leave him much room to maneuver if Iran digs their heels in and refuses to stop the Houthis from attacking. It would be unlikely that the United States would attack directly, but they could do. The trouble with Donald Trump is we don't know. If there was a strike, it would be limited. It would be against IRGC targets, and those IRGC targets, that's the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, that have got a special element of it called the Quds Force, who provide the support out to the different groups that are operating across the Middle East under tacit Iranian control. Donald Trump could launch cruise missile attacks to attack their headquarters, their logistic bases, their wherewithal for supplying the different groups. And of course, the IRGC have got a naval element. So there's a number of targets if Donald Trump wanted to attack directly. I suspect he'd try and stimulate the Israelis to do something beforehand. But again, with Donald Trump, his unpredictability is one of the issues that makes things probably more stable, but at the same time, even more unstable. The situation with Iran is very worrying from a global stability perspective for a number of reasons. The continued Houthi attacks into the Red Sea is having a massive impact on international shipping. There have been a large number of attacks over the last few years, cutting off probably 60 to 90% of the shipping that would ordinarily have gone through the Red Sea is now being forced to go around South Africa, adding about 10 to 14 days to the average shipping time, and about $1 million a ship in costs. So we're having that immediate impact. If there was a war with Iran, that would affect oil coming out of the Gulf region. That would have an immediate financial impact across the globe. And it would impact trading from Southeast Asia up into the North Atlantic and into Europe. And this is probably part of the reason why Donald Trump is trying to get Europe to step up and deal with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, because there are three conflicts brewing. And we've got Russia-Ukraine ongoing, we've got the Middle East getting worse, and we've got a brewing tension and conflict in Southeast Asia with China and Taiwan, but also China's regional growth aspirations, which Donald Trump has said is his priority. He's focused on China. The three of those could easily come together because, as I said, we've got this axis of evil of China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, who have recently held joint naval exercises, all bar North Korea, working together. There's increasing military cooperation and technical cooperation between the different countries. And each of them is representing a part of regional instability. It could come together without any real difficulty whatsoever. I've been at this game of monitoring what's going on around the world for about 40 years in the military and then commentating on it afterwards and watching it very closely. I try not to scaremonger. I try to play things down, but this is the first time I can see a real path to a global conflict with conflict in Europe, conflict in the Middle East, and potential conflict in Southeast Asia, all coalescing and coming together. And it's extremely worrying. The warnings and indicators are growing. Donald Trump is not doing anything that will de-escalate it. If anything, he's doing everything that he does is escalating it and making it more tense. Now, he's doing that in a way where his actions are unpredictable, and that unpredictability itself will bring a degree of stability, because those that are stimulating the different actions around the world won't know what Trump's reaction is going to be necessarily. However, I'm concerned, and looking at what's going on in Ukraine and what is being forced on Ukraine from a peace settlement, and the implications that will have on Xi Jinping and what he decides to do with Taiwan, and looking at the equipment developments and the exercises that Xi Jinping and China are doing in Southeast Asia, I think Xi Jinping has made the decision that he will try and take Taiwan by force. The only question is when. And that's very worrying indeed.
Our message to Iran is you better take this president seriously, and I think the Houthis learned that the hard way this past weekend. As I said in my opening remarks, there's a new sheriff in town, and this president is not just going to sit on his hands and allow terrorists to launch attacks on commercial vessels and U.S. naval ships. Those actions will not be tolerated.